Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely wild, the jaw-dropping wealth of the OpenAI Foundation, and how looking at a few historical models can actually help us figure out the future of our entire economy. I mean, if you've been paying even a little bit of attention to the rapid advancements in AI lately, you know we're standing on the brink of a totally new era. But the biggest question isn't just about the cool new technology itself. It's really about, well, what happens to the global economic structure when artificial general intelligence, AGI, starts doing all the heavy lifting? How does society even function in a post-labor economy? Let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the world's largest foundation. Then, we'll cover funding the post-labor economy. After that, we'll explore homesteading in the AI age. And finally, we'll wrap up with AI dividends and modern Fordism. All right, Section 1, the world's largest foundation. Okay, I need you to just try and wrap your head around this number. $260 billion. Because of its super unique corporate structure, the OpenAI Foundation actually owns 26% of OpenAI's public benefit corporation. So that puts the foundation's valuation somewhere between $130 and $260 billion. Seriously, just let that sink in for a second. That valuation makes it literally the largest philanthropic war chest in human history. To put that into perspective, just look at how this compares. It completely dwarfs the endowments of historic titans. We're talking about the Gates Foundation sitting at around $75 billion. Novo Nordisk over in Denmark is at $150 billion. OpenAI's foundation could realistically be nearly double that. And the whole mandate, the overarching mission for all that money, is ideally to maintain global calm, peace, and prosperity as we transition into this crazy new world. And they aren't just sitting on this cash either. To prep society for what a lot of experts theorize as a post-labor economy, they are already deploying a massive $250 million grant. And this grant is specifically targeted at researching new economic frameworks. They're deeply investigating things like public wealth funds, worker ownership models, and AI dividends. Basically, they are trying to figure out the million-dollar question. How do we structure society for a scenario where traditional jobs either vanish or completely transform, and economic value doesn't just go to traditional labor anymore? Which brings us to Section 2, funding the post-labor economy. So you've likely heard of UBI, right? Universal Basic Income. This is the model where citizens receive a direct financial safety net. It's just a recurring cash payment meant to cover your basic living expenses. Plain and simple, it's the most straightforward approach to making sure everybody can just survive. But alternatively, there's UBS, or Universal Basic Services. Now, this one focuses on directly providing those fundamental human needs, rather than just handing out cash. Think about it like drastically dropping the cost of healthcare, education, and housing to the point where they're essentially guaranteed for everyone. It's all about directly providing the necessities for a life of dignity. Then there's Universal Basic Compute, or UBC, and this idea is truly native to the AI age. Instead of getting money or direct services, the system guarantees you raw processing power. It hands you the digital tools and the AI capabilities so you can go out and build or generate your own value in the new economy. And finally, we have UB, Universal Basic Equity. This model is pretty wild because it would distribute actual ownership shares. Think of it kind of like the permanent fund in Alaska, the one that issues dividend checks to all its residents. In this scenario, society itself owns a piece of these massive frontier AI labs, ensuring that the public profits directly from their exponential growth. Now, what's really fascinating here is the philosophical thought experiment happening around these models right now. Some people look at these massive distribution systems and see a form of traditional centralized government welfare or socialism. But others, they view it completely differently. They see it as decentralized technological socialism, where algorithms just hyper-efficiently match supply and demand. In that view, it's almost libertarian, right? Because the technology is handling all the friction without needing a massive state bureaucracy. We're obviously not picking sides here, but it is absolutely crucial to see how differently this future is being interpreted by different groups. All right, moving to Section 3, homesteading in the AI age. To really grasp these sci-fi sounding concepts, it actually helps to look backwards. We have faced massive economic and structural transitions before. By mapping historical milestones onto our current trajectory, we can kind of make sense of where we're heading, dating all the way back to 1649 in New England, up through the Industrial Revolution, and right to the 2020s today. Take the year 1649, for example. Back then, if you arrived in certain parts of the US, land was essentially free. You literally just needed to use it. You put stakes in the ground, you grabbed your plot, and you built upon it. Without that land, you could do nothing. And that is the exact mental model being proposed for universal basic compute today. So the crucial takeaway here is that providing free digital capability echoes historical homesteading. The AI labs are essentially saying, hey, here are the services you get for free, now go build on top of it. It's about arming citizens with the raw materials, in this case compute power, needed to create their own value, just like settlers who were given a plot of physical land. Which brings us to our final part, Section 4, AI dividends and modern Fordism. Let's talk about Fordism for a second. Named after Henry Ford, this was a socioeconomic system that perfectly matched mass production on assembly lines with mass consumption. Ford essentially revolutionized economics by realizing one very simple truth. He had to pay his workers high enough wages so that they could actually afford to buy the massive amount of cars they were building. So, fast forward to today. A modern AI economy might act as a sort of privatized version of Fordism. Instead of a car factory paying high wages, you have tech companies handing out tokens, compute credits, or even UBI. Why? Well, so that everyday people can actually afford to consume the endless digital services and agentic workflows that those exact same companies are mass producing. And we're already seeing glimpses of this. Major labs are giving millions of dollars in compute credits to startups, basically just so those startups can turn around and purchase their tokens. The cycle is repeating itself. But here is the absolute biggest differentiator between past industrial revolutions and our future. The wealth generated by artificial intelligence essentially has no upper bound. None. We are talking about the potential for triple-digit GDP growth here. Because the fundamental materials of the digital world are practically free, the scale of incoming abundance is unlike anything the human race has ever witnessed. So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. For the last couple hundred years, the traditional government has been the ultimate backstop for society. But if private frontier labs, holding hundreds of billions in foundational wealth, eventually become the primary entities issuing our digital land, our basic services, and our income, how will the fundamental structure of our world transform? It is an incredibly fascinating time to be learning, adopting, and paying attention. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.